Great Britain in the late 1940s was still very much feeling the aftermath of World War II. The huge challenge to rebuild industries, infrastructures, transport links and communities still reliant on rationing had begun. 1948 saw the introduction of the British Nationality Act, allowing millions of people from the Commonwealth to migrate freely to Britain to live and of course to work. Nearly 500,000 people who left their homes in the West Indies settled in Britain before 1973. Among them were war servicemen and women, skilled workers, medical professionals, and those seeking to build careers. These people had responded to a call to help a devastated Britain to rebuild and restore the post-war economy, whilst hoping for better opportunities for themselves and their children. Kickstarting this mass migration was the arrival of the Empire Windrush on June the 22nd, 1948, carrying over 1,000 passengers and changing the face of modern Britain in the process. We now refer to these men, women and children as the Windrush generation.
London is the place for me. London, this lovely city. You can go to France or America, India, Asia or Australia, but you must come back to London City. Well, believe me, I am speaking broad-mindedly. I am glad to know my mother country. I've been traveling to countries years ago, but this the place I wanted to know. London, that's the place for me.
Arrivals at Tilbury. The Empire Windrush brings to Britain 500 Jamaicans. Many are ex-servicemen who know England. Citizens of the British Empire coming to the mother country with good intent.
Well, I am part of the Windrush generation. I came to this country the 21st of March 1955. As a young lad of 17, it was more or less of an adventure. So we were like the pioneers coming to look for jobs, you know, to find a street that was, we didn't find a street that was paved with gold, but we went looking for it anyway. I remember when I came, the sun was shining and I said, oh, they told us that there's, you know, bad weather in this country. But when I woke up the next morning in London, I said, isn't it daybreak yet? Because it was so overcast. And I realized it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Because I came here in 1968. I was only 11 years old at the time when I came. I can remember coming here, and it was quite a culture shock for me as well, really, being so young as well, traveling on my own as well. When I came to England, my parents, they did experience quite a lot of difficulties, but when I came, they already had their own house, so that was a bonus for me.
My parents came here to Northampton in 1955. They came to England in 54. They met on the way, and within less than a year, they were married and became Northampton's first Windrush married couple.
I came here 1958, the 20th of July. Come straight to Northampton, and I stayed in Northampton. I would be here for 65 years.
I was born in Jamaica. I came here as a 9-year-old in 1958. So I'm 10 years after the original Windrush. I came on the ship. My 1958 arrival to this country, to Southampton docks, was full of adventure.
My mom came in the 60s, my stepfather came in the 60s. We in the Caribbean knew that they had gone to England, to the motherland, and so there would have been maybe some element of preparation, but I don't think I would have coped as well as them.
Well, I was conceived in Jamaica, and my parents got on the Windrush rush to come here. They weren't married until when they got here, and then a few months after I was born.
Dad did one of the typical things that a lot of men did when they came. He was on the trains. And my mum came under the nursing umbrella. Midwifery was her forte, and that's what she excelled in. Now, the situation that I'm sure happened with a lot of families is parents were almost passing ships in the night. I don't think I ever got to see my parents together. I was about 1.5. They had a conversation and it was decided I would go back to Trinidad and be raised by my mother's parents. But I'm not alone. There were other children like me who were born here and got sent back there.
There were a lot of couples that made that journey from 48 onwards who left children in the Caribbean, firstborn children, who were left to be raised by the extended family, more than likely grandparents.
My mother came to England on her own, so my father was in Jamaica. So for her it was extremely challenging to be away from her children. My brother, I've got a brother who's a year older than me, so for her to have stayed here, working extremely hard whilst her young children, her young 2 sons are in Jamaica, must have been extremely challenging. She answered the call to come to England to be a nurse, and she had a good academic background in Jamaica, came to Northampton and settled in Byfield Road in St. James. She quickly established herself within the National Health Service and worked at St. Crispin's, which was then a mental health hospital in Dustin, Northampton.
I wanted to be a general nurse at the time, so I went for my interview. There was a lot of other white children went for the same job as well, but I didn't get the job. But we all had the same qualification and everything was all the same, but I didn't get the job as a nurse. So in the end I decided to go to do my psychiatric training instead, which I got through to do and progressed quite well with that.
My dad, he went up to Hull, up north of England, originally to his aunt. And because he had a shoe business in Kingston, Jamaica, she told him he better come down to Northampton. He found somewhere to live on York Road in Northampton, and it was a Scottish lady's house. And she was quite kind, and she asked him what can she do to make his Christmas, his first Christmas in England, you know, kind of happy. So she said, I would like some chicken and rice. So she made him some chicken, and then he said he didn't know what the rice was because she gave him rice pudding.
I was going to a Polish family home. That's where my fiance was living. So he lived with some Polish people, lovely people, Bali and Gladys. They were so they take me in, and I was treated like their own.
My father's uncle was actually here at that time. He'd come over earlier, and actually that's where my parents went to live. A lot of Jamaican people actually went to live with my uncle, Uncle Ivan, Mr. Wyatt, a lot of people knew him as. A lot of people that came to Northampton from Jamaica, that's where they first lived. And it was a house that had many families in it, you know, many couples in the one house. Everybody had their own room, and they shared the kitchen and had to put a shilling in to use the gas and so on. But yeah, most families that first came here actually went to live with my Uncle Ivan.
I chose to go into the Air Cadets because I had that little passion. I loved to see aeroplane and a passion for flying. Being a black and the only one in the Air Cadet at that time, as a black man, I had to really prove myself and be an achiever. It got me to the point that I learned to fly gliders, from gliders to single engine aircraft, twin engine aircraft, to the point by just before my 15th birthday, I was chosen to co-pilot a private jet from England to France and back with top-ranking officers and so forth.
I joined the Royal Marines in 1973, and at that stage I think there was probably less than 20 black Royal Marine commanders. So it was extremely challenging, as you can imagine, and also it equipped me with, I think, some problem-solving skills which stood me well throughout my life.
You know, there was this gentleman who had a place where we had more freedom as young men. You know, we had a nice big room. We could play our music without any problems, you know, entertain. And that was, you know, good for us. And then we usually go on Saturday nights when we can afford it. You know, we used to go to the West End. We discovered the West End. And West End became ours, you know what I mean?
Some of the early barriers were at school. I went to school at Spencer School in St. James, and the focus wasn't on education. For me, it was on survival, because the environment wasn't conducive to learning. The teachers didn't understand. I found it quite a shock, because I had no knowledge of the concept of racism when I came.
There was only me and my brother that had the same coloured skin. And I used to think something was wrong. Kids being kids, we were called all kinds of names, and I couldn't understand why me and my brother were different. I used to pray every time I went to bed at night. When I was, you know, from I was little, and I used to say, oh God, please let me be white in the morning. So that's the first time I realised there was some kind of institutional racism, but it was okay. I went to my secondary modern school, and I was the head girl of all white school.
It was very difficult for me because we as Westerners, we speak English, but as you know, we got like a twang, and maybe the children there, they took the mickey out of me because of the way I spoke.
But one thing that happened when I was young, we wanted to go to the toilet, so we went to a friend's house, and their parent opened the door. Everybody else could go in and go to the toilet, but I was told, no, you have to go home and use your own toilet. At the time, I didn't question it, I just did it. But obviously, they didn't want a black child to come into their house and use their toilet.
And when these people came back home on holidays and so, they never once mentioned racism. They never once mentioned, you know, the hardships that they met living in one room, the paraffin heater. You know, we heard about winter, but we heard about snow, and it's white and pretty. We never heard about the sacrifices and the hardships. These exhibitions are so important because generations need to know and put a value to the hardships and the sacrifices that these people made when they came.
So we were Church of England in Jamaica, and tried the Church of England in Hammersmith. The first week nobody spoke to us. The second week we were told, somebody came up to us and we got really excited. And I say us, at this time it's still me on my own. And they said, oh, you were sitting in somebody's seat. And my mother just looked at the person. She said, well, that's the last time you'll be seeing us.
Remember, we were trying to get into a nightclub one time, and they, you know, when we reached the door, they says, no, you can't get in. I remember in Labrador Grove, I went into a pub, and me and my brother-in-law told that they wouldn't serve us. You know, but apart from that, in the West End, when you go to the West End of London, like Piccadilly, where they used to have a jazz club, it was a completely different scene. But that didn't put us off, because we always find our own entertainment. We made our own parties, you know, so we gravitate to our own friends and, you know, peers, and we still find our own enjoyment. I knew that racism existed from Jamaica, because the school that I went to, St. George's College, was 75% white, and all the teachers were priests, and they practiced racism on me from Jamaica. So I knew that it existed. So when I came here, you know, I knew what to expect then.
It's one thing that I was very angry about until I realized that it was Northampton slang. I went in the butcher and he said, "Can I help you, my duck?" And I was really angry because I said, "Do I look like a duck?" You know, that was one of the things I didn't understand. And then he told me that is one of the slang of Northampton. People do say, "Thank you, my duck. Bye, my duck." You know, but I didn't know, so I thought he was being awkward to me.
Community to me is intergenerational, intercultural. That's what it means to me.
Well, there was no community. When I came here, there was no community. We had just to actually start to build a community because we weren't allowed into the community that existed.
I think for me, it's being around like-minded people that just want to get on, people that are passionate about what they do, people that have pride in themselves and in their culture, whether that's similar to mine or completely different, and respecting one another.
I remember I was a very good table tennis player, and I was in Cricklewood and I saw this youth club where they were playing table tennis. And I says, "Can I come in and join?" They says, "No, you got to be under 18 to join." I said, "Well, I'm 17. He says, "No." And the only place where I found I could go and play table tennis, there was a West Indian Student Union in Earls Court, and we had our own cricket team, and they did a social evening as well on a Saturday night.
But what did follow me in my life was the community aspect that my parents had, yes? Where they would look after somebody's children, my mother. So I understood community very quickly. And it was very easy for me to sort of join an African Caribbean club in London and become very much a part of it.
There was a selection of black people about then, really, and you find it was a very strong community then, really, as well, you know. Everybody seemed to know each other. And now you're still in contact with a lot of people, but it's more widespread now, so the community is a lot better. We're more widespread now. I
just love communities. I love communities with a passion. Whatever colour, race or creed, that is community to me, when you feel content in yourself that you can go into any of them.
What comes to my mind when I think of community is integration and assimilation. And in my view, I prefer that sense of integration where you can respect different people from different backgrounds as opposed to you have to be like us. So that, and linked to that, is a sense of pride and identity.
Pride is so important for a community to have a sense of their identity and know who they are. When you are assured of who you are and your culture and you celebrate it, there is no need to feel insecure or to feel in any way less than any other group of people or any other ethnic group.
I'm really proud of what my parents and their generation did for me, for this country, and for our future of our children.
I'm proud to have been born when I was born by who were my parents, and growing up and being here today. I'm proud to be here today.
I've got a very strong identity of myself, really, and I'm glad what I've achieved. I mean, one thing I'm proud of as a young person, I was the first young black person who passed their driving test very young and had a car in Northampton here, so I was very proud of that.
We come from a black pioneering family, because my parents were married in 1955. The first Northampton Windrush baby boy, Eddie White, the late Eddie White, And then I was the first girl. Also, I was the first black police officer in Northamptonshire, African Caribbean in 1978. So some people say, oh, you were the first policewoman. I said, no, I was the first police officer. There weren't any men. My family have contributed to Northampton.
If I wasn't proud of myself, I don't think I would have the drive that I have. And pride it's not just self, it's looking at others who have inspired you along the way and, you know, bringing that pride and instilling that into the youth who are the future for tomorrow.
Pride is, for me, knowing where you come from, being proud of your ancestors, your people that have paved this way for you. Knowing self-love, I think that's kind of like the biggest thing, loving yourself.
Well, I identified myself from very long that I'm an African Jamaican.
I'm a black woman, yeah, of African Caribbean Jamaican roots. And I'm a proud Northamptonian.
My heart is with Jamaica.
I'm so proud to be a black woman, I really am.
I'm a Jamaican. I'm also British. I'm proud of my heritage.
I am very much proud of my identity. Now I'm honored as an elder in Africa, within Rastafari. I don't see that I could ever change my identity for anything else.
In 2018, the Windrush scandal came to light. Despite living and working in the UK for decades, many people of the Windrush generation were now facing a threat of deportation, with the British government claiming they were in the country illegally.
It was only when the scandal came out in 2018 that I kind of looked deeper into it and I realised that some of my family members were affected, so they were threatened with deportation. They weren't allowed to work, they weren't allowed to claim benefits. So many of them lost their jobs and they weren't able to pay their rent, and they were threatened to go back to a country they knew nothing about because they came here when they were children.
The scandal of Windrush was a scandal of forgetting. It was a scandal of not valuing the contributions of a group of people who came here.
I've seen firsthand what that's done to somebody close to me. Somebody that did come over as a child in I think it was in the late 50s. And he came over as a British citizen and he lived here, like he was 6 when he came over, and he's lived here all that time. And this was just before Windrush broke. He got a letter saying, you are here illegally, you could be deported. And to imagine what that meant to him, it really did break my heart.
It means a lot to me because I am supporting the Windrush generation who got caught up in the government Windrush scandal, working through the Home Office to support them getting their compensation and getting their status.
A scheme was later set up to provide compensation to the people affected by the scandal. However, only an estimated 5% of victims had received any compensation, and more than 20 of those eligible had died before receiving payments.
The system for compensation, it shouldn't have happened in the first place, and once it's happened, the way they've dealt with it is absolutely scandalous. And I feel for those people who are suffering directly as a result. And I think it's something that we need to stand up for and fight, irrespective of how long it takes.
For me, scandal is too weak a word to describe what happened.
When I was talking to my mum about my great-grandmother, I just felt like a huge sense of pride in knowing that she paved this way for me and if she hadn't came over and been so resilient, I wouldn't have been here today, and I wouldn't have had, maybe I wouldn't have had the opportunities that I have had today.
They gave rise to people like me.
Windrush represents the achievements as well as the challenges of a generation before us who were the pioneers, who in many respects had to carve that way out to find a place and to establish their identity and their sense of belonging in a country for which at the time they weren't necessarily accepted.
At some of the ages that people left the Caribbean, they were very young, inexperienced in life, but there was also a sense of hope because the new opportunities and the vision that they had of Europe, of England, was one that was very comforting.
When we came to redeem Britain, save Britain, to help to rebuild Britain, that's what the word means to me. We were builders.
I'm very proud of what my parents did. The bravery of those young people, because they were all young people coming over to somewhere they've never been before, and staying as well in a culture where it was different from theirs. And we need to remember that and honour that.
Because they really work hard to build up the country.
I call them foundation generation, because it's like building a house, you have to send the foundation deep. So the Windrush generation, all over it, from wherever in the Caribbean, Africa, wherever they're from, I personally see them as people who send down some strong steel structure for our people in this country.
It's not an easy thing to do. So you're dealing with people from the beginning of strength. There is no question.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for the sacrifices you made. Thank you for the courage you showed in standing up to everything that you met when you came, so that other people can follow.
They did face a lot of racism and almost was accepting of it. Nowadays, it's still around, but we don't accept it anymore. It's not tolerated.
In my day and age, my generation, racism and like hostility is more passive, and it's more in the forms of like microaggressions. Because I remember like my mum telling me stories about how she grew up, and it was like very aggressive, like people throwing rocks through the window and stuff like that. But like my day and age, it's more those like small little things, all those grey areas, but they all kind of add up in the end, and it can become overwhelming over time.
And I've seen changes in a lot of people. You know, some people really, really wants to make change, but there is still that negative force.
There's more opportunities really for people if they want to take it on. There's a lot of opportunity. And black people are sort of more included in a lot of things now, whereas before you wouldn't actually see that.
Opportunities are changing and I think evolving. Certain doors were shut to the Windrush generation, but I think today that the generation, the descendants of Windrush have recognized that their struggles may be different. However, they have more, let's say, social capital. They have their education, they have more exposure, they have more knowledge and learning, and they're not sitting back waiting for opportunities to come to them. They're going out there and they're laying hold of it and seizing it.
My granddaughter said to me a few years ago, she said, "Grandma, did you know I'm half Jamaican, quarter Italian and quarter English?" I said, "Aren't you lucky?" So there's a lot of changes going on within our families. Changes are for the better.
The king sit on the throne in Mama Africa.
We've got to bring up our young people not to be injuring each other or doing things to each other, but to have that really positive, because it's the hand-me-downs, it's the handing down. I've been handed down a gift from generations before. My father was obviously handed down his father, and so on and so on. We've been given gifts.
I would kind of encourage people to be more open-minded, and yeah, I think just being open-minded and going out there and like doing more research, and I think even the schooling system over here, learning more about, Black British culture or different cultures inside of the UK.
I think it's more important for all of us who are descendants to acknowledge the struggles that took place then, and to pass on those stories.
I think everybody's entitled to actually share their story so we can have a better understanding, so we can have a better dialogue with each other, and we'll have a better world.
My greater focus is on the future for the children who are at the schools, the younger children who are coming through, and it's absolutely vital that that contribution, the work that they've done, is properly acknowledged, because only by information being disseminated will the white community and the black community get together, because we can dispel many of the myths which has caused so many problems within our communities.
Education indeed is critical because it is liberational. It's the opening of our minds, and it's not only the fact of educating our people about the past, but educating in such a way that there's a critical ability and competence to link the past to the present and understanding what that means for the future.
There is only one race, the human race.
Behind you, Windrush child, palm trees wave goodbye. Above you, Windrush child, seabirds asking why. Around you, Windrush child, blue water rolling by. Beside you, Windrush child, your Windrush mom and dad. Think of storytime yard, and mango mornings, and new beginnings, doors closing and opening. Will things turn out right? At least the ship will arrive in midsummer light. And you, Windrush child, think of grandmother telling you don't forget to write.
And with one last hug, walk good, walk good. And the sea's wheel carries on spinning. And from that place, England, you tell her in a letter of your Windrush adventure, stepping in a big ship, not knowing how long the journey, or that you're stepping into history. Bringing your Caribbean eye to another horizon, grandmother's words, your shining beacon. Learning how to fly the kite of your dreams in an English sky. Windrush child, walking good, in a mind opening meeting of snow and sun.